right, shalom. So we live in a constitutional republic, not a democracy. So I'm assuming the attack is against Trump based on the insurrectionist comments and what have you. Now, keep in mind that when it came to mask mandates and vaccine mandates, that was directly unconstitutional. Using regulatory agencies such as the ATF and Department of Mental Health and Department of Health and everything else was a violation of the oath of office of all public servants, including the military. Me being a Messianic Jew, I don't side with either party. I hold everybody equally accountable, right? My uncle was First Sergeant Military Police 82nd Airborne, and so that helps you give a little bit of perspective, but he was wrong in the aspect of to have respect to persons is to commit sin. He was all about respect, that chain of command. Keep in mind the chain of command in the United States of America is we the people, right? Not the public servants. It is, he's indicating to a degree, but keep in mind it's a slant against Trump. However, where was this when mask mandates and vaccine mandates were being implemented? When the people were being bribed by their states and what have you to get the vaccine, and if they got the vaccine, they would get rewarded. And then ultimately, they're being punished for not getting the vaccine, right? They're losing their jobs and what have you, which is a violation of the Civil Rights Acts of 1964 as well as 1968. Then look at prior to COVID, just literally prior to COVID, you had Andrew Cuomo that was trying to force the Amish to get vaccinated against their will. Otherwise, they would face fines or get their schools closed, which again is the lower level executive branch trying to impose their will upon the people, right? The Amish, and we have the old order Amish have been separate from society for the most part. On biblical term, you could call that kadosh, but they're not truly in alignment with the Bible either, right? So that said, being a Messianic Jew, Yeshua was a black Jew that proclaimed salvation is of the Jews, for John 4:22, with Romans 2 clarifying that Judaism won by heredity but by obedience to the Torah, which the Bill of Rights being modeled after the Ten Commandments, right? And that's what makes a Jew, and it's completely indiscriminate. Most prominently, all the hate crimes and everything else have been perpetrated by the Democrat Party, right? George Washington, Freemason slave owner. Benjamin Franklin, Freemason slave owner. Benjamin Franklin was affiliated with the Hellfire Club out of Ireland, where their motto was do as thou wilt, perform satanic rituals underneath the church. Now stay in church above them was just secretly satanic. Freemasons support the Democrats and support the KKK and instill Jim Crow laws. Still to this day. So when Biden was trying to utilize the KKK clause and everything else against the people in a way, if you're trying to attack modern Christianity, it's like he's a Zionist Jew. He's not even a Jew, right? Zionist Jews are satanic, no different than the Ashkenazi Jews, right? The white Jews, in other words, or the European Jews. The Sephardic Jews are equally accountable to the Ten Commandments. I'm a former member of a Black Hebrew Israelite church, right? It doesn't matter what your heredity is, nor your skin tone when it comes to adherence to those Ten Commandments, right? And then you want to talk about an insurrection. Look at what the police did with me, right? You have 4 police interaction videos where I asserted the very principle that they didn't have the authority, but they wanted to exercise that authority over the people, pointing their weapons, arresting me, and everything else without due process of law under the First Amendment, right? Free exercise, which is prominently, again, the Democrat narrative. You're not scientific, you're anti-science. I went to college for engineering. I could debunk evolution theory and the Big Bang theory on purely scientific principles. Charles Darwin may have been a Freemason himself, but his dad and his grandfather definitely were, and it's his grandfather that taught him those theories, right? It's a satanic agenda. So if you want to attack Christian nationals and white nationals and everything else, which is prominently done by the Democratic Party under the pretense that you're not an equalist, you don't like me because of this, because of that, because of this, you're that phobe, you're this phobe, all various phobias. One point of a Christian is not to fear anybody, right? And to love everybody unconditionally, regardless of whatever you believe. But at the same time, that unconditional love doesn't mean compliance with your irrational ideologies, right? So I can have my arguments against the Protestants and Catholics as well. Again, being me being a Messianic Jew and what have you, as well as the Ashkenazis and the Ishmaelites, aka Muslims. I'll take on the big 3, as well as most prominently the modern scientists that want to use their ego to try to instill this mentality that just because I have a degree in a certain field, that makes me the subject matter expert in everything scientific, when they're violating the principle of science, right? Science means knowledge, knowledge implies fact, and they're denying actual facts in favor of their vanities. That's not scientific, that's egotism, right? So that's the aspect you have to put into context of things, because again, I can argue alone and what have you, and I might get the military involved. Possibly I might send them an email and what have you, just for fun, see what they want to say about my court cases and what have you, just to see if they want to be my witnesses, right? Not as if I'm going to, under Title 18, Section 2383, they can be there to quell the rebellion of the court systems in the city and the states and the counties and everything else. Because again, when you violate the rights of the people, that's an act of treason under Title 18, Section 2381, right? 2382 is misprision of treason. 2383 is rebellion or insurrection. 2384 is seditious conspiracy, right? They're also in violation of a multitude of state laws because the police want to act like they have supreme sovereignty. However, Article 2, Section 2 of the New York State Civil Rights Code states quite clearly, supreme sovereignty in the people, no authority under any pretense whatsoever can be exercised over the citizens of the state without, paraphrasing the last part, consent of the people. So you want to talk about being a combat veteran. Try being a Christian, let alone a Messianic Jew, where you're the very government that's there to protect and serve the people has been utilized to attack the people, right? Under the pretense that they have the authority to do so when they don't, right? They're the insurrectionists, but you're worried about somebody that was illegitimately convicted as a felon and we have on a multitude of different aspects because he's supporting a republic agenda, right? Again, a republic asserts the individual rights of the people, whereas a democracy is majority rule of the minority, right? So are you more on the Democrat slant where it's a Freemason Great Reset agenda committing to socialism, or are you abiding by your oath of office like all the other public servants have to? It doesn't matter if they're the president, doesn't matter if it's legislature, doesn't matter if it's Congress, doesn't matter if it's Supreme Court. Supreme Court case law, Marbury v. Madison, anything repugnant to the United States Constitution is automatically null and void of law. That correlates to American jurisprudence on constitutional acts. Congress can't create laws that violate the rights of the people. That's automatically null and void, which correlates to Miller v. United States, where a right can't be converted into a crime. So basically, when it comes to the police asserting authority over the people that was never given to them constitutionally, that's unlawful detention, right? They are there to serve and protect the people, no different than the military. And that's why we have that Second Amendment right to bear arms, which the Democrats want to mitigate prominently under the pretense that the government has the authority and allow the government to have the weapons and marginalize the people, right? What was Joe Biden's ploy there? F-14 or something he wanted to deploy against the people, right? So if you understand the context of things, you understand that the narratives that they utilize is to marginalize the people. And how is this person, that soundbite, any better, any different? We don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. Shalom.